Thank you. You may be seated. After the session today, we have a plane to catch, so there won't be much time for book sales, but I think the bookstore is going to take on the books so they can continue selling. And I said to Caroline she should speak a little faster this morning because we've got a lot more to go. That reminds me, if you're looking up interesting things on the internet, look up Fran, who's the world's fastest talking female, and she talks 12 words a second. And she recites Psalm 139. So if you can understand what she's saying, you're getting somewhere. So her name is Fran. She lives in New Jersey. So there you are. I always like to start off with a funny, just relax you, prime you for learning. And just reminded me of this pastor down the road from you, Pastor Mona. He had finished speaking and this person came up to him and said, you know, you must be smarter than Einstein. So he thought about it for a while because Einstein was a very smart fellow. In fact, Einstein was on Time magazine as Man of the Century for his discoveries and so on. So he found that fellow the next week and he said to him, what do you mean I'm smarter than Einstein? So the fellow said, well, there was only about 10 people in the world that could understand Einstein, but when you speak, nobody can understand you. So I'm asking you to track with Caroline today, a lot of stuff to cover, and thank you once again, Pastor Mona, for inviting us. And all of you that have come out today to hear us. We really appreciate it. We're honored to stand before you and speak these truths. And in fact, I said to Caroline, she should actually just tell you quickly how she got to all of this and before that. So thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hope you slept well last night and you had a wonderful day yesterday and great evening. I just wanted to also, whenever I go to a church, there's always something that stands out about the pastors, and sometimes there isn't something that stands out. But what stands out with you, for me, is that you really are applying that scripture in your life, rejoice despite the circumstances. There's a definite calm and peace about you, which is beautiful. So can we just honor Pastor Mona? Practicing what she's preaching. Okay, so yesterday when you were asking me about, what got my interest in this whole field, from a little girl I was always interested in the mind and teaching my teddy bears and my dolls. But when I had my kids were young, we've got 4 children, and I would remember driving them to school when they were really young. And every day I spent, and I'm not joking, at least 2 hours, sometimes 3, researching the brain, the mind, and my field, and I have to keep up to date with everything that I do on the scientific side of what I do. This teaching around the world is one part of what I do. The other side is research and clinical trials and things. So I do a lot of that. And I remember one day asking God, when I just had dropped my kids from school and I was driving back, and I said, why am I so obsessed with the brain and the mind and how we think? And so clear, not that I'm super spiritual or anything, but it was so clear, this voice in my head that said, if you teach people how to think, you'll teach people how to find me. And I thought, well, that is all the motivation that I need. So that's what I'm trying to do, ladies, is teach you how to think in the way that you're designed to think. And we must never forget that we are designed to think in a way that is brilliant, fantastic, beautiful, wonderful, outstanding. But we're in control of that. We control how we think. And remember, your thinking goes with feeling. When you think, you feel. When you think and feel, you choose. And as soon as you think, feel, and choose, you create. You're always in a Genesis moment. So you need to be very selective about what you're creating, because what you create produces fruit. And the fruit might not always be so great. So we need to renew our minds so that we think, feel, and choose correctly, and that we need to think, feel, and choose and bring all our thoughts into captivity so that we produce the correct fruit. And that's really the sort of spiritual side of what I try and do with my work and help you to do. And this is a lifelong journey, and it's important because you'll see from the first slide that how you understand and use your mind is predictive of how successful you will be. And that is very scriptural as well. I pray that your soul will be well so that everything else may be well in John. 1 John, I think it's 1 John 1, somewhere around there. I'm not quite sure where, but anyway, you've heard that scripture, okay? So how you understand and use your mind is predictive of your success. Remember, success is intrinsic. It's not the external trappings. It is the intrinsic peace that is going to be there to support you through the tough times, because life is challenging. Okay, so based on that, yes, just a quick summary of yesterday. We spoke about there being a problem, and I mentioned that people are dying 15 to 25 years younger than they used just a few decades ago, how the trend of people living longer has reversed, and how the predominant reason that this is happening is mismanagement of mind. Now, I find it fascinating that we have advanced in science so much that we actually can see that the way we use our mind, which is how we advance in the first place, will hold us back or shoot us forward. So it's very good that at the same time it's grace, it's kind of grace from God, that it's our minds that are holding our back, but the science is showing that it is our minds that are holding us back. So therefore we have the confirmation in scripture and science that we have to get our minds right. So I really believe we've kind of reached a time in this generation of the mind. It's really a focus on getting our minds right. So the question, this leads to the question then, are you using your mind? And you need to ask yourself this question and think deeply about this question, not now only, but for the rest of your life. Are you using your mind just to survive? Are you just like surviving? Or are you thriving? The thriving is the freaking out in the love zone. The thriving is the peace, rejoicing despite the circumstances. The thriving is the recognition of that internal peace that you know despite what happens. We've all faced our challenges, and just last year, our son, we've got 4 children, 3 girls and a boy, and our son, who just finished at UCLA, was doing a study abroad with UCLA in Rome and Paris. And it was the second night that he got there. On the second night that he got there, they went out for dinner with all the professors, and afterwards the kids went and did a bit of exploring. And somehow they landed up in the wrong place. And long story short is that my son got basically attacked and beaten up, literally very, very close to death, was left for dead, literally. And he had, as this happened, he had fallen, his cell phone had fallen underneath him. And when they'd knocked him out and everything and kicked him and all that kind of thing, and he got stuck in the cracks of the road and it was dark, so they didn't see that. And I had just finished teaching at a church and had just got in the car, and I got this FaceTime call from my son, and all I got was sobbing. And Mom, I've just been attacked, I've just been beaten up, I don't know where I am. He had been dragged into some back alley. And as he was talking to me and as we were shouting, put your location finder on so we can phone the school to come get you, as that happened, the phone, all we heard was deep breathing and running footsteps. And the more I'm shouting, Jeffrey, 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 the less, it just instantly went dead. For 2 hours, we didn't know if Jeffrey was alive or dead. It was 2 of the most horrific times of my life. 2 hours of the most horrific time. I really felt like I died inside. It was every part of me was in agony. And those of you that have got children, and those of you that have got loved ones, which is all of you, and you've been through something tragic, you know what this feels like. It is terrible. And you have a choice to make at that moment. And that choice was, I'm either going to step into the love zone, I'm going to activate and use my mind to activate the power of God in my life. I'm going to draw on all the science that I know which lines up with Scripture, and I'm going to believe that the prayers that I laid into His future are going to come to pass in the present and the power of God, or I'm going to freak out in the fear zone and wind up not having any wisdom and creating toxic realities. Is he alive? Has he been trafficked? Is he murdered? Is he this? And I felt myself being drawn into this very easily, but not drawn, I mean, I was drawn, but it was my choice. And I started panicking and I couldn't think straight. And it was just this like complete shutdown. And I knew very quickly what was happening in my body. So I shifted over very fast into the love zone and freaked out in the love zone, caught myself there, still crying, still in tears, still in a state of shock and panic, but I'm on my knees, I'm quoting Scripture, I'm speaking to my family, I'm speaking life, I'm drawing on the fact that God is alwaysness, that I can draw on the substance and evidence that exists already in this situation, that I can work with God, that I can pray, and we can stand together as a family and phone friends, all that stuff. And knowing with quantum physics, which quantum physics helps us to understand the spiritual world, that there is no past, present, and future, so therefore there is no space-time distance. So I'm there with Jeffrey, we're with him, God is with him, he's immersed in our love, all that stuff. And I chose to draw on that. So through my freaking out in the love zone, there was a sense of peace, a sense of knowingness, a sense of this is going to be okay. whatever happens, this is going to be okay. And Jeffrey survived. He managed to, what had happened was, as he called me, the people that had beaten him up turned around, saw him on his phone, ran back, knocked him out a second time, grabbed his phone, and what I'd heard was them running off with his phone. And when he came around, he managed to creep into a cafe, and they phoned the police and phoned the school and got him back to school. But that took 2 hours. So for 2 hours, we didn't have any knowledge of where he was. We had to stand on what God promises, the truth of love, the truth of Godness, the power of God. And that was a choice I had to make. I had to use my mind at that moment to thrive and not just survive. I had to step into that zone and activate. And that's just an example. I mean, that's an extreme example, but the solution to us really learning to use our mind is we have to understand, we have to get the right mindset. So when we talk about all this renewing of the mind and bringing thoughts into captivity and detoxing the brain and all these things that I'm going to kind of summarize for you today, the things I teach about in my books and online, and an app, the Switch app, which is coming out super soon, and all these things, basically the first place you need to start, and this has come from years of clinical experience. I practiced for 25 years and I've done 30 years of research. And so I've got a lot of experience in this, and what I have found was that when I work with my patients, and now reaching millions on our platform that we have, is you first have to adjust your mindset. So when God says renewing your mind, when you bring your thoughts into captivity, yesterday I told you that you're designed to do this every 10 seconds. So you've got to catch yourself, you've got to stand back and observe what are you thinking, feeling, and choosing in that moment. So there is the example of Jeffrey. Now I hear this news. What am I thinking, feeling, and choosing in that moment? In that moment, I needed to say to him, give us, my daughter's screaming, Jeffrey, give us, put your location finder on, and I'm screaming, Jeffrey, your love is all around you. We're with you. God is with you. So in that moment, we reacted in the correct way. We made the right choice. Then we both panicked. But our mindset was one of, we are going to step into the correct, we're going to perceive this thing through love. We're going to have the correct set of mindsets. So mindsets are what you tune yourself into. So mindsets are in the zone, and they are kind of like putting on the armor and the shield of faith and the helmet of salvation and all that stuff in Ephesians. That's kind of how I see the mindsets, because what they do is they put you into the correct frame of mind. They get the correct perception, and then within that correct perception, then you can make the decisions. See, so first of all, you have to get out of that mindset into this mindset, into this attitude. A mindset is how are you going to set your mind? Okay, which is basically your attitude. In other words, it's the content and emotions of what you are thinking about at the moment, but it's the lens through which you're viewing it. It's your perception. So mindsets, attitudes, the frame of mind, like a picture frame. How are you framing the situation? Then once you framed it correctly, you can go in and you can fill in all the details. You can get down to the action, make the phone calls, do this, think, because you're thinking clearly. Whereas if you're in this mindset, you're not thinking clearly. The frame is all out of whack. The perceptions are wrong. The attitude is wrong. And in this mindset, you do not draw on the power of heaven. Okay? It is in this mindset that you draw on the power of heaven, on the substance and the evidence. And that is scientific. It is spiritual. Science and spirituality are the same thing. So we see this from the work in quantum physics by the quantum physicists, that when you choose with your mind to put on the correct mindset, you collapse and act at something that is just out there, and something that doesn't exactly exist yet, but you collapse it into an actuality. So something that's a possibility becomes an actuality. But you have to step into the zone. You have to access these ingredients, and you have to build that process. And accessing these ingredients means you are accessing the wisdom of God. It's getting in tune with the Spirit, all that stuff I explained yesterday. So I found the mindsets invaluable in helping myself, my patients, and now the millions that we teach around the globe, getting into that kind of as a first step in renewing your mind. So let's talk about a little bit more about what mindsets do. Mindsets help you see the power of your perspective. So the mind, the set of your mind, the attitude, helps you see the power behind a perspective. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a terrible day. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a difficult but an amazing day. See? Two different perspectives. Both have the power to create, because you are a thinking, feeling, choosing human being, and whatever you do is going to create. So you're creating toxic or you're creating health. Your genes are going to switch on, not your genes you wear, your genes in your DNA. And as soon as you think, you send a signal through your brain. You saw that image yesterday, and you will change the structure of your brain. So look at the next picture. This is Prince William, and Prince William in England, married to Kate. And this is, okay, I'm glad to see you laughing. Okay, so obviously the one finger, which I won't put up over here, but you can see it there, is in the toxic zone, and this is in the healthy zone, the three fingers. But the interesting thing is this is exactly the same photo. It's not two different photos, it's one photo from two different perspectives. Okay, so it really makes my point. So you're either looking at the day with one finger, or you're looking at the day with three fingers. You're looking at your situation with one finger, or you're looking at it with three fingers. And you choose. That is, I lay before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live, because every choice leads to a thought that has eternal value. And when you choose the one finger, you are neuroplastic. Your brain is neuroplastic. Neuro means brain, plastic means to change. Back in the 80s, I did some of the first research showing that when you are deliberate and intentional about how you use your mind, how you control your thinking, feeling, choosing, how you get yourself in the right mindsets, how you learn, etc., all that stuff, you basically change your brain. So all the toxic habits that you've wired in, if you've wired them in, you can wire them out. They are not cast in stone. This is not your future. This happens to be part of you and part of your character. So when you take that and you change that and you reconceptualize it into that, then you can do like Paul said, once I was like that, now I am like this. So you have grown, you have matured, you have taken responsibility. But to take these and suppress these by pretending they don't exist, or saying a scripture over them and hoping that the scripture is just going to hide them, but you haven't dealt with them, or taking a drug to suppress the pain that they cause, they're still there. So when the drug wears off, when the scripture, now you're blaming the devil for stealing the scripture, which, we spoke about this yesterday. Meanwhile, the victim mentality, that's still there. No matter how much blaming you do, this ain't going anywhere until you deal with it, like I gave the example of the Garden of Gethsemane. So it's all about perspective. So the correct mindsets are integral to succeeding in school, work, and life. And remember, always success is defined by you individually. There isn't one formula for success, and success is from the inside out. It is intrinsically driven. You cannot pursue success. Okay, the more you pursue it, the more you pursue happiness and success, the less you will have it. Because it's not an external commodity to put inside you. It is something that has to happen from the inside out. And as long as you're comparing yourself to someone else, you will never feel successful. Because there's something you can do that no one else on this planet can do. Because you have a unique perspective. Make sure that your perspective stays in the three-finger zone. Okay, so a mindset by definition is an attitude or a cluster of thoughts with attached information and emotions that generate a particular perception. So that's a definition. So here's a healthy thought. Thoughts do look like trees in the brain. They have what we call an arbor-like structure. So now this is a healthy thought. In your brain, your thoughts are made of proteins and chemicals. And also all these little branches hold information. And every branch is a composite of different types of protein. And the one particular protein is called tubulin when we go down to the very low level. And that tubulin acts like a quantum neurobiological computer. Ladies, you have gabillions of quantum neurobiological computers in your brain. You think this thing's smart. Oh my gosh, this is nothing compared to what you have in your brain. And you have gabillions of them. Okay, unbelievable. As you are listening to me now, you are using them to build new ones to increase your knowledge. And at speeds of 10 to the 17, which is faster than 400 billion actions per second. This is how brilliant your mind is. how brilliant your spiritual nature is. And then this works through the brain. Okay, so this gets stored in the brain. So right down at a very minute level, we've got these little computers, and these little computers are vibrating at these frequencies that are unique to you, and holding the vibration is actually holding the information and the emotions. So this thought that you it's built with information and emotions. The situation that happened with Jeffrey, the emotions I experienced, the reconceptualization I went through. So now when I talk to you about it, the first few times, obviously I was very tearful, but now I see the good side. We've got through it, but I still remember the detail, and there's a lot of times I use that story in different ways with more detail, etc. But it's always now from this angle. So it's not a good thing that happened, but I have reconceptualized the information and the emotion. So it's part of our life as a family, and we manage it. And you see what I'm saying? So now it's become that kind of positive attitude. So this is a healthy attitude with healthy emotions. This is a toxic attitude with toxic emotions. So never say emotions are bad, because then you're saying something that God has given you to experience the beauty and the depth and the color of life as bad. I hear too many Christians saying, don't be led by your emotions. Don't use your brain. Oh, really? Don't think. Okay, if you're intellectual, that's not spiritual. That is the most stupid thing out. That's telling us that God is emotionless and dumb, and that you're emotionless and dumb. You're not. You're a richly intelligent, emotional being. The problem is if you choose wrong, you create and build wrong emotions. And you mess up the neurochemicals in your brain, and you create neurochemical chaos. So that is a toxic attitude with toxic information and toxic emotions. That must go. And there's two categories here. Category one is the voluntary stuff, the stuff that we choose to build in our life. The bad habits, the irritations, the frustrations, the little toxic bad things that we do and we keep on doing, and we can change them. Okay? The other side is the involuntary stuff. The abuse, the rape, the traumas, the things that you didn't choose. And unfortunately, you're going to experience those in various different extremes through your life, because why? They are the result of other people's choices. Remember, I said yesterday, you cannot control the events and circumstances of your life, because those are the result of other people's choices. But what are you in control of? Your reactions. So you need to control your reactions. So based on that, let's have a look now at the 15 mindsets. I don't have time to go through all of them. I'm going to just pick out a few. But these, I'm just going to quickly run through all 15. These are in depth in this book over here, my latest book, Think, Learn, Succeed. I explain them, give you a little definition, give you some research, and I give you some really cool activation tips to help you to start applying these in your life. So this is kind of the beginning of the renewing of the mind process. We first got to make sure we're getting a 3-finger mindset, not a 1-finger mindset, because it's giving us the power of our perspective. Remember, you do not have a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a soundness. You do not have a spirit of 1 finger, but a spirit of 3 fingers. Okay? Just a little joke. Okay? So you have different ones: thinker mindset, controlling thoughts, words, controlled emotions, forgiveness, happiness, time, possibility, gratitude, community support, healthy stress, expectancy, willpower, and spiritual mindset. Okay, so these are 15. This is what I've researched over the years, and these incorporate a lot of information. Now you need to put these on, like I said, that like you put on the armor. When you get dressed in the morning, when I wake up in the morning, I make sure I have my clothes on, and I also make sure I have my mindsets on. Okay, I start with these. I dress myself in my mindsets to keep myself in the right attitude. And I'm telling you, the days that I get lazy or rushed, or I just don't do it, I can feel it, and so can my family. I don't function at the level. I start surviving instead of thriving. So then I catch myself. I do not go into guilt and condemnation. I do not get stuck in that spiral, because that'll keep you blocked. I celebrate the fact that I have acknowledged what I've done wrong. I celebrate all this and embrace it to do what? To change it. You see, if something's in the dark, it cannot be changed. If this stays in the non-conscious, it can't be changed. But when you bring it into awareness, what we see scientifically, as soon as you become aware of a toxic habit or a trauma that you haven't dealt with, that bitterness, unforgiveness, whatever it may be, this becomes weakened. Like I'm shaking this in your brain, it shakes. The branches weaken, all the neurochemicals in those areas, and the quantum energy and the proteins loosen up. Why? Because they're getting ready for change. Okay, you're supposed to constantly change. So we have a physical reaction in our brain to the choice to acknowledge and bring to the cross, confess the sin, which is the Christianese of embrace the pain, embrace the toxic habit, celebrate the fact that you've now identified something in your life to change. Because as soon as you have awareness, you have a weakened issue, and now you can change. Isn't that amazing? Now you can get into the garden and you can go through the process, which is going to be painful. You're going to cry. It's going to be hard. But if Jesus did it, you can do it because you have the mind of Christ. Okay, so don't let the world tell you anything else, or anyone tell you anything else. Okay, you're brilliant, you're amazing, and that's not just me trying to make you be motivated. It's facts, it's pure science, and it's spiritual. If God's amazing and we're in God's image, what are you? Brilliant. Okay, so let's look at a couple of these. We're going to look at the thinker mindset first. The thinker mindset, the first piece of clothing that I put on, and so. The thinker mindset is one where I know I am intelligent, I'm deeply intellectual, and in order to cope with the challenges of the day, being a wife, parent, business owner, doing all the things that I do, researcher, clinician, all that stuff, in order to do that, I need extreme wisdom. I need to access the wisdom of God, the substance and the evidence of Hebrews 11:1. I need to stay in the zone, so I have to be thinking deeply. So my thinker mindset is a decision that I make to step into thinking deeply, which means that I don't just gloss over information, that I really listen to what's coming at me, and I choose what I'm going to focus my energy on. And then I think deeply to understand and build good information into my brain. And I think deeply to understand and reject what I don't want inside of my brain and inside of my spirit. Because every time you think, feel, and choose and build a thought, you build it physically into your brain, changing brain structure, and you build it spiritually into your mind. And every cell of your body also retains a memory of that information. So it's all over the place. So you being a creative, powerful Genesis being, you need to be very, very selective about what you're putting into your brain and body and in your mind, because it has eternal value. And if you put it in, and it's wrong, you've got to do a lot of work to get it out and fix it. So if we can be proactive in renewing our mind, we have less of the fixing up to do. You're going to do it the rest of your life. And that's why you'll see my Switch app. It isn't something you just do once. It's something you do for the rest of your life. So you pretty much keep doing this all the time. So along with my mindsets, I do, well, as soon as I put my mindsets on, which takes me just a few minutes because I know them, it takes me maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute at the most. Normally that's, so as you get to know them, it'll take you longer in the beginning because you've got to learn them. And then what I do is I go into brain building. Okay, I'm going to come back and explain these now. I go into brain building. And when straight after brain building, I go into detoxing. So by the time I am dressed and out of my room, I have spent around 15, 20 seconds, and then another hour or so, and then another 15 minutes. So I try and allocate that. Sometimes I can't do my brain building in the morning because I've got to get to an airport or a conference or something. Then I will do it on the plane, like we're flying to Chicago. I will do my brain building on the plane. So in other words, I've got a routine going where I use my time. But I will come back to these three things in a moment. So let's talk more about the thinker mindset. Let's examine a few mindsets, and then I'm going to summarize everything I've said and give you like a little plan, which is basically what I've said, but I'll explain it in more detail. So the thinker mindset is one where I know I'm going to think deeply and be selective about what I'm thinking about, so I can access the wisdom of God. A thinker mindset is a determination to every 10 seconds talk to the Spirit of God. A thinker mindset is a determination to listen to the signals of my body, to understand when I'm stepping out of the perfect you zone and out of the love zone. I also call it the perfect you zone. I have a whole section in here called the discomfort zones, where I teach you how to listen to your body to understand when you step out of the comfort, out of the perfect you into the imperfect you, out of the 3 fingers into the 1 finger, out of the love zone into the toxic zone, fear zone. Okay, you got it? So our body will tell us immediately when we are not operating in love. If you learn to tune into your body, and it's things like your heart pounding, adrenaline pumping, just aware level, there's different levels. So I don't have time to do that teaching now, but you can read it very clear in the book. Okay, so I use that to help me all day long, but I deliberate when I wake up. My thinker mindset is a deliberation. It is a choice that I make to tune into my discomfort zones, to be listening to the Spirit of God. In other words, I use everything scientifically to help me function spiritually. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Now, also, the other side is your spiritual nature, your mind, your thinking, feeling, choosing is 99% of who you are. It's quantum in nature. It's fast. Your brain operates on classical physics principles. It gets tired. Okay? It only operates and functions at around 2,000 actions per second. So we have this quantum energy moving through constantly, which makes your brain very tired. So when your brain gets tired, you're not always aware of it because your mind's still going. So now you got this sudden feeling, my head's sore, or something's just not right, or you feel like anxious or edgy. It could just be that your brain's tired, that you didn't give it a rest. And all you need to do is close your eyes, switch off to the external, switch on to the internal, and daydream. Let your mind wander. And as you're doing that, you will become aware of intrusive thoughts. Good, you're getting insight into something in that zone. You will become aware of good stuff. Great, something to grow. You'll become aware of where your mind is just being chaotically going all over the place. Remember I said yesterday, chaotic and toxic thoughts reduce your lifespan because they damage the brain. So mind wandering not only reboots the brain and gives the brain a physical rest and helps to reboot the internal networks, but mind wandering also gives you tremendous insight into what you need to deal with. Okay, so it's a very important thing to do, and you can do that as often as you feel the need, and it doesn't have to be longer than a couple of seconds. Sometimes just zoning in and out with your eyes open is enough to just reboot the brain. But I do recommend that you take at least one 15-minute period in your day where you do close your eyes and you do really switch off for about 15 minutes and do this mind-wandering, daydreaming thing, which is incredibly important for brain rest and intelligence. Take a time in your day where you just don't, every time you've got a break, instead of grabbing your phone and scrolling on Instagram, just close your eyes and switch off to the external, switch on to the internal, and just allow your mind to activate and let your networks reboot, and then connect with the Spirit of God. And when you come out of that, if intrusive thoughts or toxic thoughts have popped up in your head, just make a note in your phone or write it down in a journal to know, as a note, to know that you can start watching yourself. So tomorrow when you do it, you can make notes, and you might see by the end of the week, oh gosh, I keep on thinking about this. I didn't even realize I was doing it. And that's why I'm feeling so anxious. This is something I need to deal with. So it is a way for you to reconnect. It is absolutely unbelievably powerful. Pretty much it's meditation. Okay? It's meditation, but instead of you constantly meditating on something which you can do too, this exercise is you are meditating on learning how to listen to what's going on in your head so that you can then learn how to bring thoughts into captivity. We've got so busy with life, we live under the directorate of time, that we always want to do something. So when you close our eyes, I've got to say scripture. When I close my eyes, it's always doing something. Hurry sickness. You've always, no. What is this life? We're full of care. We have no time to stand and stare. To stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep and cows. That's a beautiful poem. And by William Davis. And that is so true. Are you taking the time? They did a research experiment where they put people between the ages, it's on the next slide, between the ages of 18 and 77 years. There was actually a study done at Harvard and University of Virginia. They did 11 studies and over a period of time. And what they did was they basically took people's cell phones, computers, iPads, everything away from them. Look at the ages, 18 to 77. So you can't just blame the kids on you just as bad. In fact, adults are worse, according to a lot of the recent research, okay? And they put them in a room on a chair and they said, just think, close your eyes, just think. And they hated it. A few years ago, similar experiments were done, and it was no issue. We used to be quite happy thinking. Now we've reached a day and age with technology where we don't like to be alone with our thoughts, and that is really dangerous. It is changing the structure of our brain, it is damaging our brain, it is producing the feelings of depression and anxiety and psychotic breaks, etc., which are not illnesses. Mental illness is not on the rise. It's the mismanagement of mind that is creating a whole new problem. I have a lot of information on my website about mental ill health. I'm doing this research study that I mentioned yesterday. Mac, maybe you can flash it back on the slide again. You want to know more. But essentially, mental ill health and mental health. Let's quickly talk while we're talking talking about the thinker mindset, about these two concepts. This is a big topic, and I'm only covering a little bit of it, but you'll get the gist. There is no such thing as depression being an illness, or bipolar being an illness, or schizophrenia being an illness. None of the, or ADHD being an illness. These are not scientific. We have been lied to. I've been in this field for 30 years. I work with a multiplicity of different specialists and doctors, and there's thousands of doctors and specialists and scientists around the world who are proving and confirming this. We have been sold a lie that we are ill when if you go through depression or something, that you're ill, you have an illness like diabetes or cancer, that you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, and all you need is some chemicals to restore the balance, and then you'll be fine. And that is not scientific. It's not based on scientific evidence. It's not based on any form of valid publications of science. It is a completely biased thing that has money as the bottom line. The bottom line has been it has been making money. Because what it does is it means that they can diagnose you, they can label you, and they can give you a drug. And that drug is not, and it's a drug, it's not medicine, it's not putting serotonin back in your brain. An SSRI is not restoring serotonin balance. An antipsychotic is not restoring dopamine. It's putting chemicals in your brain that change the physical structure of your brain, that anesthetize your brain, that damage your brain over time. And what we see from the studies is that people that stay on these medications for a long period of time shorten their lifespan by 15 to 25 years. They are putting kids as young as in the womb on these drugs through IVs and through mothers, because they are saying that they can scan a brain and tell you if you're depressed. That is an absolute lie. Brain technology is unable to read your brain, and there is no neurological, neurobiological correlate for depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, ADHD, etc. There is nothing. There has been billions and billions and billions of dollars with fancy, beautiful fMRI technology and genetic research to try and say your brain made you do it. If your brain looks like this, then this is why you're depressed. So they're trying to tell you that you have a broken brain and you have broken genes. That is not the truth. Now, I'm not denying that depression exists. I totally understand that it is a very serious and very real experience. Depression, bipolar, anxiety, panic attacks. These are not things that we just gloss over. These are real experiences. But those are collective umbrella words. They are descriptive words. They describe an experience. They do not describe the cause of the experience. So if you have, every single one of you have a story. So now let's say that some child landed up in the foster care system, came from parents that were drug addicts, it ended up in a home where they were brutally raped, and they landed up from one foster home to the next, and whatever. The story that we hear often. And then they are becoming behavioral issues. They have behavioral issues, they're depressed, they're difficult, so they get labeled, they get diagnosed, and they get put on one medication after another, very often on polypharmacy, which is multiple medications. These medications are dangerous for adults, they're even more dangerous for children. And very often these kids are put on a cocktail of all four different types of antipsychotics. So they'll often start with something like Ritalin, which is a stimulant, and then they'll put them on an antidepressant like Prozac, then they'll put them on an anti-anxiety like Vyvanse, and before you know it, they're on an antipsychotic, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And these kids land up in with all kinds of whatever. So now, how can you tell a child that comes to the doctor because they have a behavioral issue, and the doctor asks a few questions? Do you feel sad? Are you battling to concentrate? Some stupid questions that aren't even scientifically evaluated from the DSM, which is not a scientific. It should be used as a doorstop or firewood. It tells you absolutely nothing. It simply is it's a bunch of psychiatrists. And I know this from first-hand experience. It's a whole bunch of psychiatrists that get together and they just change it all the time. It's politically driven. It's financially driven, and it is the thing that is controlling society. They are telling you who's normal and who's not normal, and that is not correct. They are trying to create a model like this is a normal brain, and if you deviate from this, this is an abnormal. That is not correct. You have to have a thinker mindset on to be able to evaluate this. That is not the truth. It is putting people in boxes. It is taking something that is not real and they're trying to make it real. They're telling you that you're a broken machine, and that is not not healthy. And it's creating a problem because our kids, now kids of in this next generation, if you talk to them about depression, they immediately think it's an illness. When I grew up, depression was, well, you have a story, you're sad because there's a reason. So what we have to do is move away from, if you feel sad, well, embrace it. If you feel depressed, embrace it. If you feel anxious or have a panic attack, embrace it. Why? If you embrace it, it means that you can identify the root. You can identify the cause. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, as you go through the pain, you will make sure you have some Sams, that you have some awake disciples with you to walk the journey with you. Because as you operate in shared love like that, in deep, meaningful connections, you activate resilience inside of you. You are extremely resilient as a human being. You have all kinds of genetic codes inside your brain and your body that are designed to be triggered and switched on when you operate in deep, meaningful connections, when you love each other, when you help each other. Isn't that amazing? But if you so here you have the story of this child, or you've just lost a loved one, or you've been through some traumatic experience, or you've just come back from war. None of these are part of what we are designed to experience. They're not love. No one is designed to experience seeing someone's body blown apart, or having to kill someone in war, or being raped and abused. That is not something that the human brain and body and mind are designed to experience. So it's not an illness if you are traumatized. It is a reaction. So therefore, what we need to do is listen to people's story. We need a new narrative, ladies and gentlemen. We need to recognize, I know there's some gentlemen, that's why I've included them. We need a new narrative. Please help me. This is what my life's mission is to create a new narrative so that people's stories can be heard, so that we can stop dehumanizing people. Because we are in an era where we are dehumanizing ourselves by submitting to this thing. So we have to stand up and fight. When you've been through something, you need someone to sit and listen to your story and help you in the Garden of Gethsemane. I don't even know how to help explain that even more accurately. But taking a drug is going to numb it for a time. So those of you that maybe are on antidepressants or something like that, don't go into guilt and condemnation. You didn't know. And it's okay. So it's okay. So you can't just stop them, because your brain, as you go through withdrawal, your brain will have a lot of symptoms, and you can even have suicidal symptoms and depression, because the side effects of those drugs are suicidal ideation, aggression, depression, lack of libido, which will increase your depression and all that kind of stuff. Okay, you still awake? So now you can't just stop. You have to withdraw, and it takes time. You have to get under a medical doctor. You need a team of people with you. You need a team of SAMs around you as you withdraw. It does take time. It takes a minimum of 63 days, sometimes longer, to taper off, depending on how you do it. There's tons of information on tapering off drugs. I have lots of information on my website. And I'm not talking about heart medication, and I'm not talking about insulin for diabetes. I'm not talking about the real biomedical issues. I'm talking about the mind stuff. When you are battling, when you are sad, that kind of stuff, okay? So having a thinker mindset will then lead you into managing your mental health much more effectively. Instead of just accepting that label on your child, instead of just accepting that you now have a child who's got ADHD, maybe their diet, maybe they're being bullied, maybe they're not getting enough exercise. The way school is done these days is terrible. They don't do enough exercise. They don't get enough breaks. They don't get enough rest. They teach to the test. The education system's messed up. I've been in the education system training for years, and it's horrific what is happening what has happened and how it's gone down in the last 30 years. It's really bad. Education is at its worst it's ever been, which is really sad. And our children our children are suffering in terms of stress and toxic stress in much more than what we were. So that's another whole discussion, okay? So thinker mindset there is just one example of how you need to apply the thinker mindset, and that is to the concept of mental health. Do not submit to a label, okay? You have a right to be heard. You do not have to be dehumanized. You are not a label. Very important, and none of your children or your loved ones are either. So throw that label aside and start reorientating and get into a program of withdrawal. Get your diet right, get your exercise in, but most importantly of all, you have to detox your brain. You have to find the root, the cause, etc. And that's what my Switch app will help as well. It actually takes you through the process of how to find the root cause and then to deal with that and to renew your mind. Now, can you just put there we go. Okay, so that really literally is coming out in the next 10 days or something. Okay, so now let's talk about the stress mindset. How are we doing with time here? Okay, I've got a few minutes. Okay, stress, we hear stress as being a terrible thing, don't we? Stress kills. Am I right? No, not at all. If you don't have stress in your life, you will die. Because stress is what keeps you alert and focused and able to make decisions and able to connect with the Spirit of God and access the wisdom of Hebrews 11. Stress is when your whole body fires up in response to your brain, in response to your mind, saying, I need to be alert. I need to be focused. I need to listen. I need to learn. I need to make decisions. I need to make effective decisions in this relationship. I need to do this presentation. I need to whatever it is that you need to do. So your brain has to be in a certain state to do that. You need certain neurotransmitters flowing in a certain way. You need certain hormones flowing in a certain way through your brain and your body. You need your neurons firing in a certain way. You need a certain amount of quantum energy in your brain for you to be able to do that. So in order to do that, you need to go into a state of stress. So we go through stress cycles all the time. We peak and then we drop, and then we peak and we drop. We're doing it all day long. Okay? We're doing it all day long. The problem is that we have mixed up our reactions. And we've taken one word, stress, and we've made it like the umbrella word for everything when we feel bad. And so what we've done is we've now got a one-finger perspective about stress, which is really sad because stress actually helps your body work for you. And another simple example, if I kind of summarize what stress does for you, is that as you go in, as you develop the right mindset towards stress, so stress is good for you, that perspective, 3 fingers, okay, you actually will cause the blood vessels around your heart to dilate, which means you'll have more oxygen and more blood flowing to your brain. And when that happens, that will activate the whole lot of other stuff that I just described. So 1,400 neurophysiological responses and physiological responses in your body will be going right and working for you, and all the resilience and all the wisdom. So you might be like this intense and your heart pounding, adrenaline pumping. That's good. Okay? It's helping you focus. Thank God for that. And now step in and embrace the wisdom of God. You are like a fine-tuned spiritual being, a fine-tuned radio hearing the message of God. But that's if you choose to see stress. So use that second mindset that you need to put on, the next thing that you need to put on. Stress is good for you. When you put that on, that will happen. But if you don't put it on, and stress and you just see stress as bad, so you see stress in the toxic perspective through a one finger, well, now the blood vessels around your heart will constrict. So now you have less blood flow to the brain and less oxygen to the brain. And now the 1,400 neurophysiological and physiological responses will work against your body instead of for you. And your resilience switches will switch off instead of on. And now you will feel awful. And your adrenaline pounding, heart pumping doesn't stop. It keeps going instead of here where it starts and it stops. It goes in cycles. And it's very balanced and very ordered. Yeah, it's just this crazy thing where everything's flowing at the wrong way, in the wrong amounts, at the wrong times, and now you can't think straight, you feel anxious, your mind's foggy, you can't think clearly, you feel fluey, you feel panicky, you have a panic attack. I have great podcasts, by the way, where they're like 10, 15 minutes long, and I say how to manage a podcast, how to manage a panic attack, how to manage anxiety, how to manage teenagers. You really need to tune into my podcast because it'll give you, when you're in the car driving, I give you techniques for how to do these things, okay? So that's just a side thing. So stress mindset. When I wake up in the morning, thinker mindset with everything I do, including that rest portion. Thinker mindset, thinking deeply, and also that rest portion, okay? And then also the stress mindset. Stress is good for me. I'm going to use it for me. I'm going to talk about one more. Okay, just put up the slide, Mac. Worrying about stress, the effects of stress will actually put your body into toxic stress. So by just shifting your perspective, by just saying stress is good for me, you do all the good stuff. By thinking, oh, stress is bad for me, my heart's pounding, I'm in stress, it's so stressful, life is so stressful, you've just done all the bad stuff. Okay, so now by saying, yeah, life is stressful. So now I'm all prepared for this. I've got the wisdom of God. I've got the challenge. I'm sharp. I'm a finely tuned fork, tuning fork. I'm tuned. You see what I'm saying? You in control of that. This is choosing life or death. This is really choosing life or death. This is really what Deuteronomy is talking about. One of the things, obviously there's always multiple levels in scripture, but basically this is what living a lifestyle, this is a renewed mind. This is talking to this. Do you see what I'm saying, girls? Okay, so I'm not going to, let's talk about one more very quickly. Have you got time for just one more? 1 minute, one more? Possibility mindset. I love this one. I love all of them. So here, I've got my thinker mindset on, I've got my stress mindset on, and now I'm going to put my possibilities mindset on. We live in a world where we've got to have goals and vision boards. And we've got to do these things, and then you've got to wake up in the day, and here's my list. And nothing generally works on that list. And 3 months down the line, that goal is like, what? Or that vision, you've got to have a vision, but you've got to be realistic. That vision needs to be flexible. It's a bit like Schrödinger's wave. Okay, Schrödinger's wave, Schrödinger was a quantum physicist, and he did a calculation showing that in this zone, not that zone, it's also in that zone, but in this zone, there are all these love waves. And these love waves are all the probabilities of things that can happen. And as we choose to step into the zone, we access the probability and we turn it into a possibility. And it's all good because it says in the scriptures that everything works out together for the good of those that love God. It also says in the scriptures that God's not going to, I'm just paraphrasing now, but God doesn't lay everything out before you. You can't see the whole way. You've got to trust. That's what faith is. The scriptures also talk about, what's that one scripture that, I can't remember it now, but there's so many that talk about how everything in this zone is going to work out for you. It's for your good, to give you a hope and a future. That's the scripture I wanted. Okay? So, in other words, if you know that, then what you're stressing about toxically, positive stress in the zone, there's all kinds of possibilities. So, therefore, I don't have to freak out about I don't see all the details. But I know there's going to, so that's the first attitude in this possibility mindset. The second thing is, yes, have a vision. You don't want to just blindly, blow through life. Our vision at the moment is to bring a new narrative of mental health to the world, to teach people what renewing of the mind really is. And we're becoming technology driven because it's super easy to get on your app. So we've got some clear direction, but we're very open and flexible about how to get there. So if the day doesn't work out quite like we want, or things, we can immediately look for the alternatives. We look at all the possibilities. We don't get stuck and thrown. So if you've got, I've got to do this, and then I've got to do that, and then I've got to do that, and then I've got to achieve that goal, and then none of it works out, and maybe first and second one works out. The third one, everything goes crazy, and now you have lost it. Okay, you've now got into the point because you're off track now. How are you going to get your goal? And you're going to a panic attack. You're going to toxic stress, everything. And now you've got to start. Can you see that that's not going to help you? So we need to get away from that. A possibilities mindset is basically an entrepreneurial focus, okay? It's hopeful because you keep trying till you find success. You never stop. Isn't that what the scriptures say? If you fall down, get up. Keep going. Don't stop. You appreciate the journey. We are so extrinsically driven. You've heard me say this so often, that all we see is I want that car, that house, that job, and it's very physical, very consumeristic. We live in a very consumeristic driven age, and basically we are so focused on that, when I get that, I'm going to be happy. Can you not be happy in the moment? Can you not make every weekend a vacation? Can you not make every moment in the evening when you get home with your family and you have dinner together something amazing? Yes, you can. It's your attitude. It's your mindset. It's the possibility. When you see your family tonight and you sit down for a meal, the possibility is that you're going to have this amazing time. I've had to apply that. I'm on a plane 70% of the month. I live in hotels. I go home for a holiday. Wow, I love going home for a holiday. And sometimes it can get you down, and I have to remind myself, this is exciting. I'm on the plane with my husband. I adore my husband. We're together 24/7. I can sit and chat to him. I can catch up at work. I can do you see what I'm saying? Or I can say, another plane, another day, another flight, another hotel. And it may sound glamorous. It's not. Living in and out of a suitcase. It's not. It's exhausting. And constantly on the go. But you've got to get the right mindset. And that's how I do it. Because when the days that I get like that, that's when I battle. The days I get like that, that's when I cope. You see, possibilities are incredible. Ending with this. Thomas Edison tried 1,000+ times before inventing the light bulb. When he was asked by someone, how do you feel about all the 1,000 failures? He said, I don't see them as failures. I see them as knowledge gained. I now know 1,000 things that don't work. What a great mindset. Ladies, go and look for the 1,000 things that don't work. Thank you so much. Hope to see you again. God bless.